before they went to Syria, me and some of other colleagues, we've been trying to raise our voice, see what is going on. These radical imams are using mosque, are using social media to brainwash. This organization, because we had the list of these NGOs that came from Middle East and bringing money. So one of my colleagues, he had a story how Islamic community was provided money from an organization that was linked with Al-Qaeda. So how come a state is allowing this? So, and then what happened? We were just few of us talking, openly investigating, and we were having attacks. We've been declared Islamophobes because then they wanted us not to be trusted. We were not against religion. As I said, we've been talking against the radicalization of our society, and we wanted to save the secularism of our country. So what we've been asking is religion to be separated from the state.
And we're live. Arbana, thank you so much for, well, this is our second time meeting, but for coming on my show, because I'm very excited to have you on. So thanks for making the trip out.
I'm honored, and thanks for having me.
So I told you a couple minutes ago, you've done a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts, all that stuff. If there's perhaps something the world does not know about you from what's already out there, and I know that there's a lot.
So I'm known, so whoever writes something related to Islamic State, religion, Turkey, they tag me usually. So I am a single mom of two boys. So being with them around, I'm kind of different the way people know me. So when they come into my house, I'm like, oh, you are like this. We thought that you are very serious, just writing. No, I do so much many things with my kids. So yeah, so there is different Arbana.
How would you describe yourself as a mom?
Like sometimes very strict.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes like my youngest son, sometimes like, Mom, sometimes you are much younger than your age, the way you act. So I play with them. We go a lot to watch movies, and because of what we've been through. And now since we are here, I'm really into their life, and I miss being with them because I've been working a lot on field. And since I moved here and since the pandemic, I'm working mostly from home. I have kind of some more times also to spend with my kids.
How are you strict with them?
Very strict. Especially the youngest one who just turned 13.
Okay.
He likes to play after the school, and I'm kind of, maybe because of what happened to me, I'm kind of sometimes too much. And I don't know if I mentioned previously when he was playing and he outside the school, and he was telling to their friends when he was talking to me, like, stop, do you know that my mom is Albanian? I was like, why you told them? You are very strict. And they don't know. Yeah, maybe because of the circumstances and everything. And being a single parent, it's not easy.
No,
especially in the United States, in New York.
Have you kind of loosened up over the years of living here, or is more just still strict mom?
No, in the beginning it was much harder because they were very 13 and 8, so now are growing, but still, with school and everything. Sometimes, like yesterday, I had the conversation with my parents, and they told me, like, you've been very young through tough things, and just don't expect them to be like you. Sometimes I ask too much from them. Maybe just trying to, because of what I've been through, and maybe I don't understand them, their world. I'm trying, but...
Do you know, or do you, how weird is it for you to kind of raise your kids here as opposed to, your childhood, which was obviously very different than how they grew up?
First of all, raising them in Kosovo and raising them here, it's a huge difference. I had a lot of help. I was editor-in-chief, so I had someone to take care of them, to take care of things over my house, and now it's different. But yeah, when they complain sometimes, oh my God, I'm in depression. I was 16 during the war, so just don't talk to me about depression. So I just just try to explain to them how hard it's been, and it still is for so many parts in the world out there, because I do a lot of research and writings on what is going on in Middle East, now war with Ukraine. So it's their age now. They are trying to escape from being killed. So I just try to bring them an image of their reality, because TikTok, it's not their reality. So they have to know this.
Yeah.
Because you never know during your life the struggles you might have. So I just want them to get prepared and not to complain that much, because knowing their friends, even in Kosovo, back there in other countries, they are suffering right now a lot.
So I'm very excited to have you on my show for a lot of reasons, because I have so many questions, especially when it comes to, extremists and all that. But I think for my listeners out there that aren't acquainted with you yet, I want to be able to give them a little bit of like a background, more so on who you are. So I'll let you, if you don't mind, just kind of give a little bit of quick background. Obviously, you've had a long life, on how you got into, the journalistic field, and a little bit of your upbringing, obviously through the war. And then, just so then after I can kind of, people can better understand who you are and where you come from.
So when people ask me where you're from, I say I'm from Pristina, same city that Dua Lipa is from. So I'm Albanian from Kosovo. I started working as a journalist since I was 18. I was during the war in Kosovo most of the time. And then I found interesting when we tried to escape. We escaped after 2 months of the war in Albania, neighbor country. And at the time, I could speak a little bit of English. And I've been giving interviews to the major media outlets, like everyone was there. And I had a chance to tell the world what was going on in Kosovo. And then I have realized the power of being journalist. After the war, I was still in high school in Kosovo, and everything was new for us. And living under the regime and having big dreams, and then one of the sudden you're free and you have this chance to make a change. So I went to Pristina, the capital city. I was very shy as a child. And I remember the day that my dad was driving me in Pristina, and we've heard that there is this new private journalism school. And he stopped the car. We were asking some people, do you know where this school is? And I opened the window and I was so shy. And my dad was like, you have to change. You cannot be a journalist and this shy. But I changed a lot. It was very hard in the beginning. I was lucky to start internship in the largest newspaper in my country. I was working 7 months as an intern, not being paid. So this is what I mentioned to my kids too. It's not 7 weeks, it's 7 months. And then I had a lot of good opportunities to travel abroad, work with international journalists from AP, BBC. In meantime, I met my ex-husband, who is journalist, sports journalist. So we kind of understood with each other. It was much easy also to raise our kids, even though I was very young when I had my first son.
How old were you?
21.
Okay.
But in meantime, having a support of my family helped me, because it was not easy. Immediately, I jumped into a difficult themes and subjects. I started investigating organized crime, corrupted people. Corruption back home, it's not just an individual. When you are corrupted, you are linked with the government, you are linked with the power. So you do not have a support from security institutions, like from police. You have no one. Then there is a lot of international audience, like embassies and representatives, and they've been following my work. I started receiving a lot of awards. I don't know, sometimes when I think, where did I get all that courage? I was in my early 20s when I started chasing money and going after very dangerous people. Mm-hmm. But as I said, one thing which I miss is being with my kids, because I've been very, very much active in journalism, traveling, writings, investigating, meeting people. It was like my mission, not just the work, 9 to 5, no. So it was much more than that.
So did you ever have, I guess we were talking about this courage, like you're going up, as you said, it's like the police don't help you there, or, you know, because they're also intangent and corrupt, just as corrupt as the higher powers. Where do you feel like your original courage kind of came from to be able to investigate what, you know, in these, especially your country, but in some of these neighboring countries, like, you're not going to be protected if somebody comes after you?
When you have the support of people, you kind of feel the protection, the moral protection.
Right.
So then I really had a lot of support from the U.S. Embassy. I met often with the U.S. ambassadors because they knew what I've been going through.
Right.
Most of the threats were published because I've been speaking up on what was happening. So I kind of felt that protection that at least I have from someone, people that supported me. And I was very, very young. And sometimes I underestimated threats until I've been brutally attacked later on. So we are going to talk about that. Later.
So do you remember like how old you were when you got maybe like your a first threat where you're like, man, this is kind of dangerous maybe?
I was 18, 19 when I started writing about these illegal buildings, the owner of the construction company. And I started writing about how they are building without getting permission. And as I said, I was lucky because everything was published in the largest newspaper. And at that time, there were no Facebook or social media. Right. So I knew that my stories will have some sort of impact. And I went to meet this guy who owned the company and asked him about the illegal buildings. And he's been trying to give me to give me some money. And I didn't accept that. So he pushed me over the wall of this improvised office in the field. And I went in the office and I wrote all the details on what happened to me. How he pushed me over the wall and he was trying to put the money on my bag and all that. The fear, not the fear. I wanted things to change. I was hoping for change. Because as I said, when you experience the war, you love your country. So you do this beyond just being just a random journalist. It's much more than that. And then when you see the reaction of people, and then not just that they supported me, they've been providing me with a lot of informations. And then I had the first award that I received for the best story written on corruption. I find out how the son of the former Kosovo president, he was lying that he they sold his car as a new car, but he was crashed and he was trying to fix a neighbor country. But as I said, having a lot of sources, I was provided with documents and many, many interesting articles.
So what is it that fascinated you about corruption?
As I said, for us, everything was new. New state building, new institutions, because we were under the Milosevic regime under Serbia. Right. And you kind of see your own people destroying your own state. So they've been misusing the taxpayers' money. Mm-hmm. So I've been mostly focused on how they've been misusing the public money. So these businesses, private people, were getting money from the government. This was the corruption in Kosovo. So they've been building, for example, highways. And they were getting money from the government to build, because the Kosovo was trying to build up. And I grew up watching a lot of movies with my parents, and I kind of find out a lot of things that I already have seen out there. And when you experience, you go after the budget, and then you talk to people, sometimes anonymous sources. Or I had some people from Secret Service that I didn't even knew their name. They were giving me envelopes on the street, or because they didn't want to text me the exact address. I was saying, like, downtown, I'm meeting you after this building. And they were just giving me that envelope with names and numbers. And and I really miss that time, because it's different when you are back home and do all that stuff.
Was there a certain thrill that you would get, like when you would get like an envelope with like a name and number and you're meeting in like a rogue area or whatever it is? There's got to be something kind of thrilling about that. It
is, because you first of all,
like a detective.
Yeah. First of all, you kind of feel that power that you can change things, knowing that the state is doing nothing and you are so young and you have so much power to change your country for better. And then sometimes, yes, there have been like positive things after the publishing the article, like someone reacted and other media were doing follow-up of your story. But you know, that feeling that every time you got into this, you just dig more and more. So you are never enough with what you're doing.
Have you always been like, were you always this kind of ambitious when you were young?
I was so shy. So when we had people at our house, guests, I was shy to get into the room. Like completely, I changed 100%. And everyone, especially,
what was the change? Do you remember?
I think journalism.
But like what moment, maybe?
When I went to this private school, college, the first day, every Monday we had guests and asked them questions from different background. That day was this famous singer. It was first day for me at school, and I was shy to ask her a question. She was a singer. So then when I started internship at this newspaper, there were so good journalists, like the best journalists. And I didn't even had the chance during the morning meetings to speak or suggest topics. Like you were just an intern there. But there was a very good editor-in-chief. I remember first day after the meeting, everyone was going to have coffee. And I was getting prepared. And it was like, where are you going? No, you are sitting here and you are translating. First of all, because we had to translate and see if we can translate from English. But then you kind of have the role models that you want to follow and be like them. So I was also very fascinated with Christiane Mampour. She's from CNN, journalist, and she's doing a lot of things outside United States. So I had the chance to meet also with her husband, which was very involved in Kosovo. So when you step out your country, you kind of realize that you have a lot of opportunities, and you are lucky to have the chance and to change things for better.
Did you also, like, how much of the war when you experienced it, like, because I imagine when you're able to leave, what you're saying, when you're able to leave your home country and just see the world, you start to realize that it's much bigger than, those walls of your own country. But how much did the war also kind of factor in your desire to like learning more about the outside world and like what was really going on?
First of all, during the war, we were praying, me and my sisters, I am the older one. So we were praying to God to get killed by the bullet and not massacred, because we were hearing that we're
praying to be killed by the bullet and not massacred.
Yes, Jesus. Because where I come from, they've been burning alive people. So we've heard so many things during the war. The war started on March, early, like 24th March.
How old were you when it started?
16.
Okay.
So then on May 2nd, we left, and the war was over on early June. So we were during the war for 2 months in Kosovo, escaping from house to house. And there have been a lot of genocide happened in my country. So being 16, 17 years old, my younger sister was 10. And I remember we were in the basement. We were praying to be killed by bullet. Like, can you imagine that trauma?
No, I understand.
And then escaping, and our way to Albania, which is neighbor country, we've been seeing killed people on the streets and people escaping and burns. And we were stopped by the police and questioned the fear at that age. So then after the war, as I said, you just compare what we were going through, and now we have our own state.
Right.
We've been saved, and we have to save that. And because I was one of the first journalists to start writing some different things, especially on the rise of extremism, a lot of journalists based in Europe, for example, someone from United States based in Germany, they came to interview me because they found interesting that there is a journalist in Kosovo that is speaking about the phenomenon that the whole world was facing.
Right.
So I had the this New York Times journalist, they came to do investigation on ISIS, and I worked with her, and I've been telling her what was going on. So you kind of, as I said, you have this chance to build the network, but also this helps you to work as a journalist.
Right, and obviously all the ISIS stuff and Islamic State stuff we'll talk about in a second, because I think that's fascinating. But just with regards to the war, so I'm curious, like, what, for people that have not been part of a war, who are lucky enough to not have gone through it, like, will you describe, and obviously there's currently in Ukraine, so it's, you know, I guess timely in a sense, like, what is it like to be like truly in a war, even if it's only for a couple of months?
You can understand what people are going through, but without feeling it, it's completely different.
Right.
We know it's sad what is happening in Middle East, in Yemen. Millions of people are starving, and kids. But the war in Ukraine, because it's Russia, and we were in war with Serbia.
Right.
Serbia is close to Russia. Kind of, you feel that it's happening close to us. It's happening in Europe, in the democracy, basically. Yeah. So you kind of, 22 years after what I've been through, one of the sudden, I had dreams, even though at that time I didn't have kids. When the war in Ukraine started, I felt it so much. I started having dreams that I am escaping from war, trying to save my kids. So you see, the trauma is in here. Right. So you might think that, yes, it's over, but it's in here. So I don't know, the fear of, as I said, not just being saved, but being killed easily as a kid. It's a lot. And your entire life, that will follow me.
What is so what was like the day-to-day like in surviving a war when you're there?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a sequence of what happened. One night they start burning our neighborhood, and we escaped. So how our neighborhood was built, so walls next to the houses, they had like a small doors. So it was not from the main entrance door, but within the mall, the walls, we were escaping, and we were maybe approximately 200 people within one house. And within one room, I remember I had these pens, and my mom put in my pocket a lot of pills and things because we didn't know what might happen. And it was all dark. In meantime, NATO was bombing Serbia. And when they putting bombs, like, you had that feeling that the whole house was shaking, and everyone was, at some moments, they've been trying to escape. That what is going on? You don't know. It's dark. You are all packed. Like, we were laying down. I remember I was next to the kitchen cabinets. And during the night, when there is something burn, you have this feeling that is very near you. So everyone was saying, oh, that our house is burning. And I started having panic attacks. For the first time, I remember I couldn't breathe. Because it's so hard to think or to see that your house is burning. Like, it burns all your memories and everything. And I remember they were giving me some pills and water. But in the morning, when I saw the roof of our house, that it was not burned, I cannot tell you the feeling of that happiness that it's not burned. So there are a lot of moments. Or when we had a cousin that came, and she said that her father-in-law was burned alive. And that night was the moment my dad decided to leave, and we left to Albania because we didn't know. There are thousands of people disappeared from my city. They lost a lot, and they got burned. I remember the smell of the burned people, the smell of the burnt flesh. So, and
when you're escaping,
when I'm escaping, I was seeing these things.
Like, you just see it's just dead people all around.
Yes, dead people, burning, police, paramilitary groups on the street. They stopped our car and asking my dad, where are we going?
The Serbians asked?
Yes. Yeah. And we said, we are going to Albania. And he said, you were supposed to leave early because over 1 million people left Kosovo. Wow. And I remember he was telling us, like, then you are never coming back.
Wow.
So all these things affects also your personality. It makes you stronger. And that's why having a kid on my early 20s and doing this job, I couldn't easily decide just to be a journalist covering daily political events, go to the conference, write about that.
Yeah.
But it was not enough for me.
And when you guys escaped, like how long is that journey from?
It's like 3-4 hours drive at that time, because we were stopped at the border and we had to hand in all our documents, like passports, IDs, everything. You just
give it and you just
everything. You do not exist as a human being.
Wow.
So you had to put everything. I remember that thing with hundreds of passports, IDs.
And they don't try to kill you?
No, because we've been escaped. Like they were like a lot of people escaping. Every day they were escaping. So as soon as we got at the border with Albania, we were sitting in the car. I think my dad was talking to some people. And I remember one journalist came near us and he's been asking us where we came from. And I started speaking English. And then he said, would you come next to my colleagues? And I remember I was surrounded by these big mics. And it was, and then, we went to this, we were trying to find a place where to sleep and where, there were thousands of people on the street.
So where do you sleep? Where do you go?
Yeah. So we find a house. They've been welcoming all the refugees from Kosovo. And I remember the first house that we went, because we changed, the room was colored with very dark colors, maybe just because we escaped war. And it was not white. It was like red and bluish, something like that. And I remember the anxiety we had, and we've been crying like we don't want to stay here. Because it was the fear following us. And then my dad was trying to find a little bit better place. We wanted to go to the refugee camp, but my sister, she suffered from asthma and we couldn't because the conditions were horrible.
Right.
And then my dad found a place and we were staying then for like a month and a half.
And so do you guys have any money at that point or anything?
We had some money. And I remember there were a lot of international organizations. They asked us if you want to go abroad. But my dad was saying, no, the war will be over soon. And we didn't know that. Right. And we are going back. He didn't want to leave Kosovo. And I remember there was this 2 men and a woman that came in the house. They were interviewing us because there were a lot of opportunities at that time to come in the United States, different EU countries. Right. They organized with planes, so to do the displacement. But my dad refused, so he wanted to go back.
And then what happened when the war was finished?
So we went back home. I was still in high school.
In that same house that?
Yeah, the same house.
And did it look the same?
It pretty much the same, because some other people from other houses, they went to sleep. So people were kind of moving from house to house. So it's a little bit of the blur at that time immediately after the war. And then what I remember the most was when I went to Pristina, the capital city, because it was the first time I was leaving the house and starting everything on my own.
Right.
And not knowing that, we grew up listening news, but it's not that I was thinking about to become a journalist.
Right.
As I said, that moment in the border, it gave me some things that,
What was it like to, I'm sure you didn't expect that your house was going to still be there. Like, what's it like when you?
No, we knew because we were in contact with people, because there was some phone lines that we could talk to our neighbors and family members.
What was it like when you first came home to your own room after the war? Must be a weird feeling.
So what we've got from our home when we escaped, all the photos, because at the time we didn't have photos on our phone, because we didn't know if the house might be burned out. So we just want to have the photos. That was the main thing we got. The feeling to go and from door to door to meet with our friends and hug them. And yeah, it's just, and having NATO there. So the NATO, there were Italians, because the different NATO members were based in different, like the Germans were in different city, the Italians were in our city. So it was just, the Serbs are not here. So there is something that you don't know unless you just experience that relief of not being under the regime.
So, okay, so now I want to kind of bring you to some of your work with regards to the Islamic State, because I've always personally been super intrigued by it. And I think like, I guess you're the first person that I've spoken to that's ever spoken to a extremist, or many. Really quickly, kind of side question. Did you ever read a book called Black Flags? Do you know this book?
No.
It's about Zarqawi.
No.
I remember when I was young, when I was like 14, 15, I read this book and it kind of like piqued my interest and it kind of opened my mind. And I recommend anybody who's listening to read it, because he was one of the main people of ISIS. I don't know if he's the founder. Zarqawi was, I don't know what he was.
He's not the founder, because I've seen documentaries, but
he was a big figure.
He was the big figure.
He was a big figure. And anyway, so I think that kind of piqued my own interest. But I guess for you, what was the first moment that you, I guess, realized that there's some kind of extremism going on? And like, what made you maybe like think like, okay, there's some work to do here?
Yeah. So for your audience and listeners, Kosovo Albanians, even though those that are declared Muslims, they are very pro-Western. So they drink, they celebrate Christmas and everything. So there was just recently, I don't know if you've seen, I've reposted this short story about Pristina, like more than half of the population is under 25.
Right.
So it's very modern. So while I was writing about corruption, we've started seeing, as I said, even though majority Muslims, there were no women with burqa or men with a long beard and short pants. So we have started like noticing that the number of these people is increasing. And
this is around what time period?
Like 2010, 10 years after the war.
Right.
And then one of the sudden they show up these imams, radical imams, with all this speech on all over the internet, their ideology, which was not right. And I was thrilled to kind of, I don't know, I knew that something is happening. And they start people having some concerns. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write this, but I'm going to investigate. For how long, I don't know. So there was a fellowship there is this very credible media outlet based in London, Balkan Investigative Network reporting. I applied and I won the fellowship. So they covered my expenses to travel. So I wanted to travel all around to find out, even in Europe, where the money is coming from, what is going on, how they are getting to brainwash the youth.
Really quick, so what are some of the things that you were hearing of what these imams were saying that was like sprouting some curiosity in your mind, like this is not right? Like what were some of the actual...
start talking about everything. So they've been talking about the women's rights, about the geopolitical things, what Americans are doing in Middle East. So they kind of start increasing this Western hate. Can you imagine a country that was saved by Western countries?
Right.
So that with the decision of the United States, Germany, Britain, France, the NATO bombed Serbia to save us, like to save a country with majority Muslims, right?
Right.
So now we have these radicals that immediately after the war, they went in Middle East and they become imams.
Right.
So they came with that mindset, trying to spread the word within our society. So I've been listening to what they've been preaching, because they put everything on. They start having their own PR companies.
Right.
So they were the first to use so much better the social media than even media itself. And so I approached to some liberal imams because there's some incidents start happening. So this imam that started receiving threats because he was raising his voice against these radicals. And then I went and meet with him. That what is going on? Can you explain to me? And he said, yes. A lot of things happened since after the war. We were not paying attention. Millions of dollars came from the Middle East. They brainwashed the mostly the youth. So they were based in the most poor areas of the Kosovo. Like, can you imagine what I've been talking to you about the war? How would, example, my parents, if their house were burned or suffered or have the commodity to think of if I'm going to follow an imam or listen to his lecture. So the thing is that this is what they use. The youth, mostly 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, they start offering free English and computer courses and asking in return to pray and talk about the religion. So then they grow up. In 2014, 15, they were already on their early 20s. And we kind of have seen that their number is increasing. And I decided to investigate. So to go after those who brainwash the youth and also to follow the money, as I said in the beginning, not just economy or corruption, tenders, the public money, but in every subject, you have to follow the money and find out what is going on.
So just so I understand, so they would kind of create, like, part of that brainwashing that they would do, or the means that they would go about doing it, is creating, like, what you're saying, like lessons, whether it's like computer, English.
Yes.
And then while those kids are there, they're kind of preaching some of that ideology and telling them that they have to pray a certain way and believe certain things. That's how it works?
Yes, they use these narratives, how to convince these kids to follow them.
And they would give them English lessons?
Also, yeah, they've been giving English lessons, computer courses. They've been providing them with a lot of things. Like, I find out there was a village, very poor village. They were giving money to orphans, some money like in the monthly basis. And these orphans were going in the mosque that they built after the war. So, and they kind of convince these kids that they are right and the whole world out there is wrong. So,
right about what?
About what they've been telling them.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to mention that case that I mentioned before.
Right.
This man, so Albanians during the regime escaped from Kosovo, and after the war they came back. And there is this man that came from Germany, and he decided to invest in a small factory, building the wooden stairs and windows and doors. So he had two young boys, like 18 and 20 years old. While he's been working on his factory, there was a new mosque, because a lot of new mosques were built after the war from Saudi's money and Turkish money.
So most of the new mosques were like the radical mosques?
Yes,
okay,
exactly. So both of his kids start going to this mosque.
When they're how old?
18 and 20.
When they're 18 and 20, okay.
In the meantime, the war in Syria started. And they've been telling their dad that they are going to leave to fight for Islamic State. So they didn't hide what they were trying to do. So this man, he was trying to find the ways to stop his kids not going there. So he went to police and he said, please do something, stop them at the border. Because it's at 20 years old, how are you going to stop him?
Yeah.
So, but they managed to go to Syria. This man paid money to find illegal ways to get to Syria through Turkey. There was an Afghan man that helped him because he wanted to bring them back home, but he couldn't do anything. The older son got married with this very modern girl, and he was telling me that she used to take the cab and go in the city and have coffee with her friends, and she was all covered with burqa when she had. So you see, and now the state knew the exact case, the imam that basically recruited them.
Yeah.
Because through him, they got all the connection. How the hell they went to Syria? They had connection.
But so when they send them to Syria, it was to
fight for Islam.
Right.
Against the whoever is there. So they were saying that, so the thing is that at this age, you need to belong to something.
Right.
It's kind of, they
Yeah, I
have to
understand.
do something. And this is how, and as I said, nothing happens over the night. They've been going to that mosque for months until they decided to leave. And the thing is, when you got brainwashed, nothing can help you. Even your parents, you kind of, you lose your own kids. The thing is that the state is to be blamed, not these kids, because these are the victims
Right.
of these radical groups. Because there is money coming from outside, there are the based organizations. So why the state allowed them to do this? So I had the investigative piece in 2012, was the first time published after 8 months of investigative that I did in Kosovo, Albania, some parts of Balkans, and I also went to London because I find out that the money is coming from Pakistan organization based in London. Because for your listeners, ISIS recruited also Christians.
Right.
500 men and women from Belgium went to Syria to fight for Islamic State. The thing is that it was fascinating to find out how they build their own network. For example, the man went in Syria. His wife was trying to go with the kids, but she doesn't have money. So he contacts someone else in the same village or the city and say, like, can you provide her with some money and buy her a ticket? So it kind of, this network, they all help each other for this mission. Or then I find out this guy that has these, how do you call the place when you wash the cars, a car wash?
Yeah, car wash.
Officially, he had the car wash business, but he's been paying
filtering money.
for the flights for all those men and women that wanted to join Islamic State. So I had his picture on the newspaper that I used to work. So this guy is paying, because I find out from the Secret Service, from the police, from a lot of my sources.
This is a car wash in
Pristina.
Okay. And so wait, so most of them, when they're going to Syria, it's to fight in the war? Are there any that are, because I remember, from like 2010 to like what you're saying, like 2015, there also be like these sporadic, random like terrorist attacks all around the world that ISIS would kind of claim responsibility for. Like, was it when they were brainwashing these kids, was it just to fight in the war? Was it also to like, commit some of these acts of terror?
Because with the help of the FBI and CIA, Kosovo police managed to stop some terrorist attack in Kosovo. So they get instructions directly from Syria. There was this 17 years old. They were telling him, no need for you to come to Syria. If you want to do this in name of Allah, you can do this in your own country. So this was the risk of not necessarily getting into the plane and go to Syria. They could do even terrorist attacks. So the random things they've been attacking, as I said, imams, some journalists, and those that speak up against them. But they're managed to stop the major I remember in Albania, there was this match between Israel and Albania. And these terrorist guys, they were trying to blow up the whole stadium. But police, the local police, as I said, with Mossad and FBI, they managed to prevent and stop because they've been listening to their phones and everything. So I remember I got this information from my source that there was this man in Germany that he was talking to someone in Kosovo, and he said that he's going to kill me. So he traveled to Kosovo.
An extremist?
Yeah, there is this man. I don't know, obviously, if he said that.
Right.
So I've heard that he's been followed by the police for 2 or 3 weeks since while he was staying in his home in Kosovo, because he used to live in Germany. So he came during the summer. They've been following him to see if he's going to do an attack. So the thing is that, yes, in my case, I was attacked and all that. There were some times that police was trying to do something, probably with the suggestion of Americans. But they are still out there. Just recently, not necessarily Albanians in Kosovo, because Kosovo is a small country. It's the whole network.
Right.
There are from other countries, because when you believe in this ideology, you kind of, it doesn't matter if you're American, French, or Italian, you all believe you're all brothers and you all have this mission. So they also lied, these young men and women, because they've been thinking that when they go to Syria, they're going to have everything, food and money and salary. And then when I interviewed one woman that she didn't know that her husband is killing people. So she wanted to be with her husband.
How old was she?
She was 23.
Okay.
And she told me that they lied to her, that she will have everything, better life in Syria with her kids. And when she went there, she find out that her husband is a killer, basically. Her husband got killed and ISIS forced her to marry to someone else. So what happened with these women, their husband got killed and they remarry and they were having kids, and there are still thousands of women with kids, not only from Kosovo, from France, from Belgium, from United States. There are in the camps in Syria. Even the ISIS as it used to be, it's not, but the camps with women and kids that countries are not willing to accept them back, they are there.
So they'll go with their spouse, so like a husband and wife, and or with kids perhaps, and if their husband gets killed, then they'll kind of force them to remarry and have more kids so that they can continue.
Yes.
Yeah,
so they marry for like many times within the camp. Then what I find out, when I had in 2016, I had the story on just the women that joined Islamic State.
How many, what would you say is like the percentage breakdown?
At that time, there were 43 women that joined Islamic State.
And how many men?
300.
Okay.
So these women, their average age was early 20s, like 21 to 23. And there is this woman from one city called Mitrovica. She was a fighter. So she was running camps, women camps in Syria. I was provided with the photos of her from the field fighting with munition.
And they're full burqa?
Yeah, she was 23.
Jesus.
No, like you can see her face.
But did she so you interviewed her?
No, I interviewed her cousin.
And what did her cousin say?
He provided me with they were disappointed on what happened.
Yeah, for sure.
And how young she just went there. And then I had contacts with, I remember I mentioned that woman that got remarried.
Right.
So they had like a room with maybe 1 hour a day. They had the internet to contact their family through Viber or WhatsApp.
Okay.
So I had the chance to talk to her when I went to her parents' home, and she's been telling me that she's not feeling safe to talk to me because that woman was around just looking what they are talking, or being under the constant supervision.
Wow.
Of this. So I'm telling you, it's like in the movies.
So
there's just
so what do you from your work, like what do you kind of imagine like a life is like on one of those camps?
Yeah, because from their words, like what is going on, they were trying to escape and they couldn't because they took all their documents. They didn't have any chance to escape. So there were many from them that they said, we did wrong, we want to go back, but they couldn't come back.
But but what was like, what did they ever tell you, or like what life was like what does it look like?
They've been having specific tents, or even though there were some buildings according to them that within apartments, that they can go to this center to get the food while their husbands were fighting. But sometimes they were staying at the tent, like for example 20 women with their kids at the tent, and they've been complaining that they don't have medical things for their kids when they are sick. So they find out the completely different reality comparing to what they've been told.
Right.
I remember, I don't know if we can find it in internet, maybe it's not anymore. They did this kind of campaign. Like when you go there are houses with pools. They are going to have been provided with gold. So this way they kind of lied this. And Kosovo at the time and still is isolated, and you have young men and women that didn't have the chance to go outside Kosovo. And it's not that hard to convince them. And so, as I said, it was the whole network and how they kind of helped each other to go. And they've been not taking the flights directly from Pristina because they knew that they can get caught easily. They've been going like to Macedonia, which is the neighbor country. And from Macedonia, I remember I interviewed, there was two in 2015. Both of them were 15 years old, like born in 2000, trying to escape to Syria. One of these girls, they were friends. One of them were in the good economic condition, but the other one was poor. This one, coming from the very poor family, she was more radicalized. In the border, this other girl that had better economic condition, when the police asked where you're going, and she kind of had fear to lie to the police. And she told the police at that moment that I'm going to Syria, and then police stopped them and sent them back home. I interviewed her mother. So she told me that her daughter was scared and this is what happened. So, and then can you imagine a 15-year-old? She was scared when she realized from her friend that she's going to get married when she arrived to Syria. On her way to Syria, she find out that she's going to get married. So, and she was scared, and she told the police in the border that, we are.
So for these 15-year-olds, they're basically being brainwashed and told that they're going to have this awesome life if they go to Syria. But little do they know they're going to get there and it's going to be terrible. And then she finds out she's going to get married the second she gets there.
And she was lucky that she kind of knew and realized what is going on to tell the police that she's going to Syria. And then many others, as soon as they arrive to Syria, they find out the horrible life that they're going to have there.
Did you ever speak to any like active ISIS members that had already like committed very atrocious acts of terror?
So there are some men that came back. So they didn't admit that they killed people.
Right.
So they said that, it was wrong, and we realized and we come back. So they've been trying kind of to raise awareness of that this is wrong, but we don't know what they've done there. So. And
they don't get tried like legally, like they can't?
Yeah. They got trial. There is a trial going on for many of them because some of them came back. But the thing is that we don't know if they fear consequences of if they are telling the truth or not. I do not believe that staying for 2 or 3 months in Syria, they didn't commit
of course.
anything. So we got the chance to interview, but it was most interesting to talk to them that were already there. Those that were trying to come back and not having the chance to come back.
Right.
The fear of living there and what they've been going through. So having the chance to speak with their parents and telling us the way they've been brainwashed within the years and how they basically lost their kids.
Right.
So they were telling me we didn't recognize our own children. The women, like their daughters, were not shaking hands anymore with other males, even though they're cousins. Like one of the sudden, I had the parent who told me, like, I would rather wish for my kid to be dead, that knowing that he's in Syria and killing other people.
Right.
Can you imagine a parent saying that? Such a disappointment. But in meantime, as I said, I see them as victims. Yes, they are terrorists, but they are victims of something that state didn't prevent from happening.
Right.
Before they went to Syria, me and some of other colleagues, we've been trying to raise our voice, see what is going on. These radical imams are using mosque, are using social media to brainwash this organization, because we had the list of these NGOs that came from Middle East and bringing money. So one of my colleagues, he had a story how Islamic community was provided money from an organization that was linked with Al-Qaeda. So how come a state is allowing this? So, and then what happened? We were just few of us talking openly, investigating, and we were having attacks. We've been declared Islamophobes because then they wanted us not to be trusted. We were not against religion. As I said, we've been talking against the radicalization of our society, and we wanted to save the secularism of our country. So what we've been asking is religion to be separated from the state. I interviewed this guy when he told me, you know what? Soon we are going to have Sharia law. You know what Sharia law is? And I said, what, like, you want to change the constitution? And he said, yes, this is what we aim. So I interviewed him. He was running an organization. He was an Albanian. He's an Albanian. And he told me, I was recording him, that yes, our aim is to change the Kosovo constitution and to have installed the Sharia law.
Crazy.
So you have this guy still out there, letting him spread his word and spread the influence among young men and women. Right. So so this is what we've been trying
When
to.
you spoke to some of the imams, did they ever like admit to, or not me, they probably didn't admit to anything, but do they ever kind of acknowledge that, you know, some of these kids that are being sent to Syria, like, do they have any acknowledgement of what they could be doing or what they're actually doing?
In the beginning, they made calls, public calls to go to Syria. In 2014 and 15, there have been arrestments. Over 40 imams and some other groups were arrested by the police and then released, most of them. Right. Then they were scared to kind of publicly ask for people to join Islamic State. And of course, they were telling them that, no, it's not, you cannot blame us. So they've been mentioning that also other men and women from Western countries are joining, that this is not right. So just after they've been scared, they can be arrested. But someone convinced them to go out there. And this happens like before even Islamic State existed. Right. So when we start writing about the race of extremism, there was no Islamic State.
So at what point did you feel like you'd been getting threats like kind of your whole journalistic career, so it's not like unusual for you, but at what point did you start realizing like, okay, this is like I could be in real danger?
When they find out where I live and when they come and they draw the red cross next to my apartment and the wall.
It was your son who had seen it first,
my
right?
son was 7 at the time, and he came back from school and he was the
first to see. Did you understand what it meant?
No, I don't think so, because I remember, like, police came in our house. They knew that their mom is dealing with some stuff, because even before I was writing about Islamic State, I've been followed by people when I've been writing about corruption. So I was with my kids in the car and I was followed by a car, and when I called the police and police managed to stop them, they find out with their plate number. So my kids kind of grew up in that environment that their mom is a journalist and she deals with this kind of stuff. But when they find out where I live, but even police at the day told me, like, don't worry. If they want to do something to you, they wouldn't warn you by this sign. And I kind of, when a police officer tells you something like that, you know that they are trying to silence you, because it was not just that. Sending photos of my kids on my social media, mentioning that they are going to kill them. And they sent to me the photo of a killed person on the ground, his head removed, and the blood all over the ground. And they sent me this photo, and they told me, we know how much you love your own people, your own children, and we are going to find you.
Wow.
This message was written perfectly in Albanian. So there was this Albanian terrorist they were using social media to scare me in order to stop me and silence me. I didn't stop. I was underestimating, saying like, yeah, I am doing a good job because there is a reaction. So they are scared, which means you are doing something. And then after they draw the Red Cross, a few weeks later, the attack happened against me.
Right. And I don't know how, I mean, so with regards to that specific, like the attack, I don't know how much you want to relive it or not. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I guess, were there signs that you could actually get physically attacked? Or did you, like, even that night, did you have any idea that something could happen of that, like, you know, severe nature?
So when you receive constantly threats that we are going to find you, we know where you live, and kind of nothing happens, basically. You are not killed. You kind of you are just trying to scare me.
And you've had so many of these threats.
So
it's not
many.
It's not like you're like, all right,
and
another
it
one.
was for years now.
Right.
For years now. And I was not just receiving threats over social media. They've been doing stories against me. Imams in the mosque, they've been talking against me and my colleagues. They've been mentioning my name everywhere.
Right.
So when I start having problems with, like, I'm going to mention you when I start talking about the Turkish dictator Erdogan, the two of the Turkish ambassadors. So within 1 year and a half or 2 years, both of them, they were women, they wrote public statement against me. And one of them asked from the government to arrest me because I start writing about illegal mosques that Turkey was building in Kosovo and what they've been doing with Islamic agenda. At that night on the TV, I was in Albania, and I've been talking about, with name, the president of Turkey is doing this and that and this and that, and facts and documents and numbers and money and everything. That night when I came back home, I was physically brutally attacked at the parking garage.
And you get driven home by
the drivers.
So you have drivers.
Yes,
there.
I had drivers. So I went home. They leave, and I am about to go at my car to take some things from my car, because having kids, you have a lot of things. So I opened the car, but there was no light in the basement because there was a new building and still construction going on. So I had the light of my phone. I had my phone in my hand, opened the car and trying to pull out my stuff. When someone grabbed me on my hair, at that right moment, I was scared that I'm going to be raped.
Right.
This man was holding me, and I felt so small on his body, and he was shouting my mouth, like, not to scream. And the other one, and I don't know, was punching me on. So I've been trying to move. So I remember at one point being over the wall, and at one point being attacked. But I didn't feel the pain on my body because I couldn't breathe. And I was, at one moment, you think you're going to die and think about your own kids. So it might last maybe 30 seconds, but it feels longer. I was on the ground when I heard the steps of people walking, like escaping. And I couldn't walk, and I've seen the light of my phone. When I grabbed the phone and I was trying to open my phone, my hand was with blood. So my blood. And at that moment, I thought I might be shot or attacked with knife, because you might not feel, they were telling me that you cannot feel the pain. And then they realized that the blood was coming from my mouth. I called the drivers. They came back, and I said, I am attacked. Please come back, because I didn't know if these people are still in the parking garage.
And they're fully masked, and you could tell.
I don't know if they were, because it was dark. I haven't seen their faces.
Could you feel? You felt like it was definitely two men.
Yes, they might be more, but one of them was holding me, and the other one, because they were trying to break my leg, because this leg was I'm gonna show you the photo because there is no way to describe my condition.
Right.
And then I was sent to the emergency room, and police came, and but they didn't find out who did it. So when you have so many enemies, you don't know who to blame for.
Was the police apologetic at all for like not ever?
No. In the beginning, I've mentioned previously when we met that they didn't even took the photos of my body. And when the U.S. ambassador came in my house and I complained and I said, this police is not willing to find out who attacked me because the bruises will vanish and they have to know what happened to me. And then the ambassador spoke with the head of police and the team came in my house. So no, they didn't find out.
And so it was after that you decided, like, I can't stay here anymore?
I came for a month in the United States with my older son. I didn't want to leave. As I mentioned you everything, growing up there, building your whole career and trying to it was basically my life out there, and I didn't want to leave. But even after the attack, I was receiving again threats. I remember, is it A47? The
AK-47.
AK-47. They sent me a picture of that, saying that they are going to kill me with that. So I have everything, all the facts. And even after the attack, of course, when they have realized that police didn't find out, this gave them commodity to continue and threaten me. So I didn't allow my kids to go to the soccer, and they've been completely isolated. And I couldn't just live in that fear because I didn't want to stop and speak up against this. And I knew that United States is the right place, and to speak up, to continue do what I've been doing. And even though I am 4 years now in New York, I still write, I still attend conferences, TV debates on this issue.
So you haven't been back at all in 4 years? Wow. And so, like, in terms of your career, do you feel like it didn't give you as much of the upwards trajectory of, like, when you're here, do you feel like you can still operate somewhat similarly?
You can operate. It's different when you go in the field. It's much harder, but still you can use your voice out there. So I know that I meet with State Department people. I know that when I meet with people that can make change on the policymakers, then I'm going to use my knowledge, my network, and my sources to change not just Kosovo, but this phenomenon, it's increasing all over. The ideology is pretty much alive. So I know how they recruit people, not now necessarily in Kosovo, but even in the United States. So I'm trying to use my knowledge and my background and to contribute here.
So does most of your work still have to do with regards to what's going on in Kosovo with regards to radicals, or is it also, it's here as well? It's
here as well. It's the Turkish impact also in other countries. So I'm in contact with different groups. I'm in contact with Yazidi community, Kurdish community, Turkish community who are persecuted so it now, my networks expanded with other nations, so not just Albanians.
So how present is ISIS, for example, in the United States, in your opinion?
It's not just ISIS. For example, radicals that support Turkish president, they kind of belong in the same line of ideology. Yes.
Like how so? Like what is
if they are? So you have I follow a lot of the online source. So you kind of combine people when they are trying to support, for example, Erdogan. They support what this ruthless guy is doing in Syria, attacking Kurds. In meantime, Kurds are the only one who are fighting ISIS. So you see, can you make the connection? So these guys that are supporting Erdogan are against Kurds who are fighting ISIS.
Right.
So they kind of are together in the ideology. So they are all connected. The ideology they belong not necessarily needs to have an ISIS name.
But how dangerous are these people? Like, it's one thing to believe in something, it's another thing to act on it.
It's kind of a sleepy bear. The bear is outside, sleeping right now.
Right.
But you don't know when it's going to be awake
Right.
and what to expect from them. But they are out there, they are everywhere, and they are using different ways. And these days is much easier than 15 years ago. If there was only a mosque or only an NGO office,
Right.
now you have social media that is much, much easy to recruit. They are within the schools, they are within the colleges. They are very smart, basically. They speak dozens of languages, so you never know. You have to keep an eye on your kids. Not necessarily your kid should be a Muslim to be into this network. They can be Catholics, they can be Christians. And I remember I've seen this story from this mom from Canada. Her son was a Catholic and he joined Islamic State because they are exposed to their narratives, video, messages. Is kind of the lecture they follow until they become a trustful soldier to their ideology.
And then that can either mean like going to fight for them or committing like an act.
Not necessarily commit immediately an act, but not all of them are brave enough to commit an act.
Right. That's the
so not all of them will commit a terrorist attack. But when they expand the willingness to belong to this thing, then you never know. You might have today a 17 years old who doesn't have a courage, but who knows what we'll go through in 5 years, and who will use him for a special mission. The thing is that it's not just chasing or going after the terrorist guys. You have to keep an eye on the spread of the ideology.
Right. And so in your eyes, do you feel like ISIS is stronger or weaker than they were in 2011?
They are reorganizing because some of their leaders got killed.
Right.
But now in March, they have the new leader. So they are committing the terrorist attack, which the media is not covering.
Yeah.
You have terrorist attacks in Africa, in different third world countries that media are not really paying attention until something happens in the Western countries. But especially now with the high flow of the immigrants coming from this part, they can use the immigration flow to be undercovered as an immigrant and get easily into the Western countries, but also not necessarily coming from there. So they could be recruited for many years here. They can be an American citizen. They can be a Swedish. Like I mentioned, there is this show on Netflix and explains you how they recruited Swedish two brothers to trying to do the terrorist attack.
Right. So for you personally, like, what keeps your motivation high?
I kind of grew up. I didn't become a journalist when I was enough mature. I was very young, and I kind of grew up building myself. And I know that the value of democracy, because I was living under the regime.
Right.
When you do not have freedom, and I know not necessarily we cannot compare the freedom of me living under the Milosevic regime, but also freedom of the women. See what is happening in Afghanistan. Taliban, you know who they're attacking the most? Women. Yeah. They are not allowed to go to school. They are not allowed to go out their own house without being accompanied by the men. Right. So this is the freedom they are trying to destroy. So it's not just being scared from terrorist attack. It's beyond that. it's the freedom, it's the Western values they want to change.
Right.
So this is what I'm trying to write and raise awareness.
Have you ever spoken to one of those Taliban women directly and like kind of been able to interview, or no?
No.
It's very difficult, I imagine,
it's very
right?
difficult. But with those that, as I said, they regret that they joined, that they went to Syria, and their parents.
Are there any that you've spoken to that don't have regrets, that are very happy of what they did?
No, because they don't want to speak with me.
Yeah, they don't want to speak. But what would you estimate? Like, do you think that there are any that are content? It would have to be like
I think that women especially, because being a mother and raising your own kids, as I said, there are women terrorists and they are fighting, but also women that they joined, they were following their husbands, and it's hard for them. Now, there are terrible conditions that they are living, and no one wants them back because they are scared.
Right.
And they don't belong to nowhere, like even in Syria, living in those camps, and they cannot come back. And it's just hard. But in meantime, as I said, still many of them, I'm not saying most of them, many of them are victims. Right. And in that young age, you cannot make responsible even parents. It's kind of the whole network, teachers, everyone should kind of keep an eye open when it comes to this, because you lose a child, but also you kind of contribute on increasing their network all over the world.
Do you ever tell yourself, once I do this, or once, like, say there are lesser rates of radicals, I'll like stop my, how do you gauge where you're at with your career? And is there ever like a point that you'll say, okay, I'm done with this subject, or I'm done?
I had moments, especially when I was attacked, kind of feel powerless. Like, as I said, you see only your kids and yourself, and what if something happens to them? You're going to blame yourself.
Right.
Because I didn't write to become famous. And I was telling my colleagues, I was receiving a lot of awards, never thinking about that. I loved my job. I love what I've been doing. It became a part of me, not just a job. It was me. It was Arbana. That even here, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm not getting paid as a journalist when I speak up on the conferences. So this is my mission. So what I'm planning is just to leave some of my knowledge, writing books. I have a lot of unpublished interviews, facts, documents. I just want to leave there for students and how to investigate for journalists. Because it's my experience. Many journalists can benefit from my experience, because I grew in the society when there was not safe to write about this. So there is many things that I'm still planning to do.
What do you think you'll ever go back and live and be able to live?
I don't think so. I don't know. I cannot, because for now, I still, on a daily basis, if you Google my name on social media, there are tons of fake news against me. This way, they are trying to increase the hate against me with the fake news, things that I've never said, with my photo, and you never know. There was this guy recently, like a few months ago, maybe, he said that we are going to throw acid on your face. 3 days ago, there is the other guy. If I see you on the streets of Pristina, I'm going to kill you. And they don't even hide their identity. So you never know. Right. So I cannot risk my kids.
And what are the conversations that you have with your kids when it comes to these things? Like, what does a mom say to her?
They raised a lot of questions, especially lately, about Islam. And my youngest son has a very good friend who is Muslim, I think from India. And he'd been telling me that, and I said, not all the Muslims are bad. They are suffering from these radicals. They are good people. Yeah. So the religion is not to be blamed. And we cannot see all of them as extremists. So they are asking questions because they don't know. They
Right.
think that all the Muslims hate me because what I've been writing. So they just want to hear from me.
Well, that's always for me, like what I think what was, I guess, most painful, because I have a lot of Muslim friends as well, and I think was most painful for them, and even, I guess, in turn for me to see how they were treated. It's like Islam at its core is just like most, basically every other major religion, is a very peaceful religion. You know what I mean? It's the, and I would even argue that extremists are not Muslim. You know what I mean? Like that's not to be a true Muslim.
This is what I told you. The thing is that even Christians were recruited. The thing is that, do you know how many Muslims are fighting Islamic State or against them?
Right.
Activists. You have women. Exactly. You have women in Iran. They come up. They have courage. It's hard for them to come up in Iran against the Iran regime. You have I have Afghan friends that I escaped. They were raising their voice. This Afghan movie director, that she is doing remarkable job. So the thing is that we have to applaud these women and men that they are raising voice, because it's sad. In meantime, because of these attacks, because of the extremists, people that do not have knowledge, they hate Muslims. So this is not right. Even if you are covered, even if you see a covered woman, she's not bad. She's not extremist. I have a friend back home in Kosovo. I have to mention this. When I received an award from Obama administration as a woman of courage, the first couple that brought me flowers is this covered woman and her husband. Both of them are Muslims. They are devoted to the religion, but they know what is going on. So they were the first to acknowledge my work. So
I guess to wrap things up, what do you kind of hope life looks like for you and family over the next 10, 15 years? Like, I don't know if you ever think about it like that, but what do you hope? You know, obviously there's been a lot of, the past 5 years for you have been very turbulent, in ways traumatic. Like, how do you kind of hope that the next decade looks like for yourself?
Like, if I go back and how many things happen, I cannot predict anything.
Like, if I told you 10 years ago you'd be here today, you'd be like, you're crazy, you know?
In 2015, when I received an award, I was in the White House. So I would think that like 5 years, 6 years later, I will be here as an immigrant, basically twice, during the war once, and now for the second time. And it's different when you come as a visitor. It's different when you are a single mom. And it's a completely different story, my life with my kids here. So
what do you, if you had to manifest some kind of...
I don't know. As I said, my plans are, even though I don't know what might happen, is, first of all, I feel good that my kids are safe. And I am planning to write. So I am planning to share my story, not Arbana's personal life, but what happened in the recent years, in the last 10, 15 years with the society, and how things might change, and how our courage changed the society for better. We need courage. We don't know what might happen. You never know. As in my case, I didn't know that I might be brutally attacked. But even that, you don't know. It might happen here as well. I am not planning to stop.
Do you ever feel like, would you say you don't live in fear here?
I had some of my friends who I used to met them back home, and FBI representatives, they told me, we will suggest you not to share the location where you live. Usually on social media, we share location, but this is that thing that I'm not doing. They suggested me not to share the location.
Well, we have to wrap things up, but I just want to thank you so much for coming on. And I mean, I think your story is fascinating. And I know that, you know, for a lot of young men and women that want to get into journalism, I guess in ways it could be scary, but in other ways it could show that I think your courage shines through, and you know, you're doing a lot of the work that nobody wants to do. So I think that's amazing. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. My pleasure being here. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram at felix.levine. And if you have something to say, please leave a comment.